In 2017, Sega released Sonic Mania, a new classic Sonic game that got critically acclaimed. I've played the game for myself and I thought it was fine. Most of its issues come from how the developers didn't even make it more accessible to a new generation. I've tried the game twice and both times I was unsuccessful at it. When I was at the flying battery zone in the second playthrough from memory, I would die multiple times, including during the boss fight, and I would have to redo the whole zone again because saving the game was rare and expected players to get through it. I understand you want to make it feel like the classics, but it's also okay to innovate or make the game more accessible to current players. However, this isn't a video about Sonic Mania. It's about a Square Enix RPG that released in 2016. You likely never heard of it. I am Setsuna, and if you did, you probably know it as that one Nintendo Switch third-party launch title game. After playing it for 13 hours and getting through a good chunk of the game, I decided to stop playing because of this wizard fight. But also, there are many things I find to be very difficult. I'm assuming it's trying to be like a classic Super Nintendo RPG, but the issue with it is that there's not much polish with it that affected my experience with the game. I know in the thumbnail I showed Sonic, but I don't care. This is one of the most outdated games. I am Sensuna. The concept of this game is basic, and if it's done right, it could have worked, but this isn't it. The story has potential, but in the end, it's acting like propaganda to tell a good story. And I want to remind people that I've only gone up until this fight because it expects a lot out of you. We'll get to it eventually. You're mostly going on a quest to kill a character who is identified as a sacrifice in which you are required to die. After meeting her, the title character, you embarked on a quest to the lands to grant a wish or some shit. The game itself wants to use the story as a motivation to move forward with the adventure, but I felt it was weak. There's plenty of stories that can deal with this message much better, and the characters didn't help. Most of them are fine, but they exist to add party members, and that's pretty much it. Silent protagonists that you have to make choices for, title character, strong woman, big guy, liberal, and Edelgard from Fire Emblem. Speaking about the multiple choices, you would have two options and it's always treat them the same way. Get it right? They will agree with you. Get it wrong, they will scold you. I get why it's like this, but this isn't character development. It's just press the button to make people upset or happy. But in the dungeon before that shitty boss fight, they use that to their advantage. And how you get it wrong, go back to the start of the dungeon and fuck off. Throughout the game, they tried to give the characters development, but I felt it didn't mean anything because why bother when they only exist to have party numbers because of the type of game it is. So what I'm trying to say, it's trying to be deep and it has the potential, but it doesn't make the moments impactful because they want to limit everything to make it a glorified Super Nintendo game. This is where I want to explain that the gameplay sucks ass. The combat is more real-time like Final Fantasy VII. Once these bars appear, you can do standard attacks, use items, and even one button they use both magic and special attacks, which they use MP for. This is all standard and the combat can be pretty fun and interesting, but it has issues. When two characters have their bars filled, you get them both at the same time. This can be used for team attacks, but the issue with this is that after one attacks, it should be that the animation plays and then the next character gets to choose. Here, after the selection, it goes to the other character, and because I'm stupid, I press a button without realizing that I did so and thought it was a follow-up attack, but nope, I pressed a button. This type of unpolish is everywhere. This also leads to saving the game. Yes, I know why it's like this because of past restrictions with older hardware, but it makes the player constantly save, and this came out in 2016. There is no excuse why a game that is a lengthy adventure have to have saving systems like this in 2016. You're not only making it more punishing, but also it's unethical to make an RPG archaic in this era. And this isn't an indie studio, it's motherfucking Square Enix. Downright pathetic. And to top it all off, there's not that many in the world, and dungeons don't have much of them, making them a rarity. Non-dungeons have worlds where they don't feel connected and it's just a straight path, and villages are not that common. This also makes it difficult to get potions and ethers, essential for boss fights and enemies that suck ass. These squirrel enemies are the worst. There's a 50% chance you might hit it, and if it's a snowball, you are essentially fucked. And this leads to the boss fights. Many of them are fine, one of them is too easy, and I know the basement ship boss was difficult, but the wizard one was a fucking shithead. Yes, I suck ass, and I didn't do it correctly, but everything around him is ass. The ruins I've mentioned with the multiple choice questions is the one with this boss fight, and I know if I decided to leave and grind, I would have to go all the way back to the top, because no fast travel, and this would mean I have to find ways to change my team and their ability things that would determine what they can use in battle. It's called Spite Knights, which is basically material from Final Fantasy VII, but much more restrictive. Only specific characters can use certain ones unless they have an S, and then anyone can use it. But that makes it more difficult to build a strong party with cool skills. Going back to the fight. He would also steal your health and MP often near the end, and I assume it's part of the challenge, but it makes the fight cheap than anything else. I know it's an attempt at strategy, but this makes it more archaic than anything. The reason this type of stuff exists is due to the game trying to be a Super Nintendo game, or the game wants to be a cheap game that they can make money off of for those who want a classic RPG gameplay. The issue with that is gaming has evolved so much, and many of these problems would make certain players not understand and quit. Yes, not every game is for everyone, and that's okay. I know this game isn't for me. But with the same people who are currently making mainstream RPG games such as Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts, it makes them look embarrassing for making a game that is a glorified indie game. And to bring this back to Sonic as well, you will make current day gamers give up on the game because of these cheap issues. A challenge is always accepted, but accessibility features could help with these type of games. Worse yet, they are still being implemented to this day in big releases such as Sonic Superstars, from my understanding, with cheap boss fights that go on too long. Indie games, sure, big properties that appeal to the masses is not going to work. This is my problem and mine alone.